Okay, well, our table came up with what is there in place to track the progress of the current budget, and how can that be improved so it's more accessible to the residents? And how can the CDC be a part of that?
So for 2016, we actually started doing twice a quarter meetings, so 8 meetings a year with all of the project managers. A lot of them are in DPW to get a sense of where the projects are in terms of timeline, budget, and the deliverables they set out to do back in 2015 for 2016. We're currently exploring options for that. We also, for making that kind of more of a public portal, but we also have our quarterly CPFC update meetings, which we do have a website for. Yeah. And those meetings are also open to the public, and the last one in December is actually cablecast on the city channel. So that's kind of a higher level meeting on our capital budget projects and priorities.
If I can. Sure. I see my colleague from the Controller's Office, Andrew DeWitt here, who looked at me real quick. Back in the beginning of 2015, City Council, the Controller, and the Mayor's Office got together and formed purchased a piece of software. It's called Fiscal Focus. OpenGov is the platform for it, and what it does is allows us to bring in our financial information in an automated fashion. We need to do a little more work on the capital end to make sure that that is displayed properly, but that is a great tool and a great way to see in public. You can reach that just by going on the city's website to the Controller's page, Fiscal Focus. I believe it's also on the front page of the city as well too, so you'll see it there off, I believe, off onto the right-hand side, far right.
Hello. Our table had a very spirited discussion with regards to tonight's topic. And our question is, what can the city do to help neighborhood community centers become sustainable beyond capital budget contributions?
Did you need to hear that again? Did you need to hear that again?
Yes.
What can the city do to help neighborhood community centers become sustainable beyond capital budget contributions?
I hope that I'm going to answer this question. Some of this, obviously, just, I guess, truth in budgeting, as we talk about, the Parks and Recreation Department really does not do physical plant. So in terms of, community centers, those are, other assets that we talk about. But I think we need to look in terms of really looking at models that do not only sponsorships from private entities, some cost recovery in some of our programming. There are certain programs that we operate that can generate revenue, and I think it's really important as we look at that in trying to get some of those dollars invested back into our recreation program. This past year, I believe we've been able to write for almost $900,000 in grants that have gone directly into programs, which we consider a really great success with trying to put some of those direct dollars back into our recreation centers and into our kids and into our seniors and into all of our populations, because we feel it's our best asset is not necessarily our recreation center, but the people who come there. So we're always looking for new and inventive ways to be able to provide those opportunities for people outside of taxation and outside of, obviously the capital budget. And I think, private opportunities is probably a direction we're going to look more towards.
Well, I think one of the things for sustainability is something that David mentioned, And that's the use of cartograph, the use of being smart about your purchases, being smart about how expensive things are. But back to the idea of doing sponsorship. There is the possibility of some legislation that may come forward to help allow for sponsorship in our parks and for some of our facilities. In our Act 47 plan, way back from 2009, the revision of it, there is a market-based opportunity line item put in there, and basically what that was supposed to do is allow for advertising and different sponsorships throughout the city. It hasn't taken hold yet because there's a couple little glitches in the law, and you may see some changes in that. I think they are looking at trying to do a pilot program to allow for some of the sponsorship to happen. As you know, our big problem is money. So regardless of whether we're talking about capital and borrowing money, we have to be able to have the money to pay those funds back. So it's always a revenue issue. It's always a chase for money. This is one possibility to help to do that, help to bring those additional funds in from our corporate friends.
All right, so my table was very concerned with transportation and recreation in the city. The roads in Homewood are in state of disrepair, as are the city steps, and a lot of our neighborhood rec centers are dilapidated. Neighborhood development only represents 9% of the capital budget. How can we assure that these issues are being tackled and that the nonprofits, universities, et cetera, that occupy these spaces are paying their fair share to revitalize these neighborhoods?
I can start about the nonprofits. You guys talk about development. So I think you addressed a couple different issues there. One thing as far as the infrastructure that gets you to those facilities. A couple things we're working on is one, trying to put more money into fixing our streets. Last year we spent, or this year, we allocated $15 million for street resurfacing, but that's a drop in the bucket compared to the needs. We should be spending a lot more than that, and we're trying to do so. Regarding, you mentioned steps. One of the things, we actually won a $100,000 grant to actually look at ways to not only develop more strategic plans for investing in our steps to fix them, but also make sure we understand how are they actually being used. Because to your point, we know there's a lot of steps throughout the city, but I don't think everyone has a good handle on what they're actually being used for. So are they being used by kids to go to school every day? Are they being used by senior citizens to get to the bus route? Are they being used by individuals just to get to work, walk to work or take a bus or whatever, or folks to get to rec and senior centers? So we want to really look in, not only look at the conditions of the steps, but understand and prioritize which ones need to be repaired. And on our facilities, we are in the midst of a comprehensive assessment of all 350 city facilities, from our rec centers to police stations to fire stations and community centers and everything in between, where we deliver services. And really looking at what we own, what condition is it in, what do we need to do to get it up to shape. There's some places where our workers and residents that are getting services are in buildings that are not in the best condition, and there could be safety issues that we need to address, but also to make sure there are good living environment or working environments for our workers and you residents that are getting services when you visit them. And regarding how can we work with our nonprofits, you're right, they are a big chunk of the workforce in the city, but also the tax base, and that they're not paying. So we are working with the hospitals, universities, and others to try to make the case that while they are providing good contributions in our communities, it hurts because they are using the infrastructure. Their employees and customers use our roads, bridges. They are dependent on our police and fire and EMS services when there's an accident. So it is fair, in our opinion, that they contribute to the management and operations of the city, and we are working on that. As far as any questions you had about development, I'll let the URA kind of talk about communities.
Sure. So you asked about the neighborhood line item. The URA also uses some of those funds, and we work collaboratively with the community development corporations to use some of the funds to, you see some infrastructure and street repair with the URA as it relates to our development projects. And then you also see us, out there using these funds to fix party walls, which is if a house is torn down, then we'll give the adjacent house, you know, a party wall, and projects like that with the capital dollars under the neighborhood line item.
And I wanted to add a little more about the steps. If someone at your table wants to find out more information, our office, City Planning, manages the STEP survey, and thank you, Director Ashwell, for talking about the grant that was received. You can go to Pittsburgh, PA/DCP, and you can find more information about the steps that were surveyed. And we have an interactive map that actually shows details about what we found when we did survey those steps. And the contact information is also on there. Kristen Saunders, who's our bicycle and pedestrian coordinator, oversees that process.
Hello, everyone. Our table has decided to talk about something that's personal to me. Recently, I spent 3 weeks sleeping outside due to homelessness and shelters being filled. So our questions are, where does affordable housing fit into the capital budget? And why can't we take the abandoned buildings and turn them into housings for current homeless people?
Hi, yeah, thanks for the question. That is a question that we have been really focused on. Well, the URA, we've been focused on that for a while, but the city as a whole is really studying, like, what can we do about this issue? And there's been an affordable housing task force created this year that is studying that. So a couple of points on that. In terms of how does the capital dollars address these issues. So I'm in the housing department of the URA, and we get capital dollars from the city and also other resources that we use to develop affordable housing and to preserve existing affordable housing. So a lot of the construction that you see coming up, these larger units like here in Larmer, right around the corner on East Liberty Boulevard, those are being used. We use city funds to help build those so that they are affordable to folks. And there are different tiers and different income levels, but they are affordable to folks really no matter what their income is via different financing mechanisms that we use. We also use city funds to preserve existing housing, both rental affordable housing and also just people's homes. The URA uses some city funds, and we run a program for lower income people who own their home who need to fix up their home. We have a 0% interest loan program for that. To get specifically to your question about homeless shelters and so forth, there are funding sources. We'll work with our partners at Allegheny County to help support housing development projects that have supportive service needs to them for folks that are homeless. There's been some in the East End that we have supported in that respect for that. And the Affordable Housing Task Force that I mentioned is really studying what is that actual need for housing units, and I'm going to pass it off to Michael a little bit to talk about that.
I also wanted to talk about our Community Development Division. I mentioned that earlier, which is the division out of City Planning. We offer, through the CDBG dollars, Community Development Block Grant dollars that we receive from the federal government. There's an opportunity through our Emergency Solutions Grant. I don't know if you all are participants in that program as well, Jessica, but that's something to look for. You can go to the website, like I mentioned before, pittsburghpa.gov/DCP, and you can try to find that. So the Affordable Housing Task Force was created last year, and I don't want to get too far in depth on it, but one of the tools, there was a series of recommendations that came out of the Affordable Housing Task Force. One of them was the development of a housing trust fund, which would be a dedicated source of funds that would go towards a variety of uses. So those uses have not necessarily been established yet, but if you read our report, we have suggestions around those uses. And those uses do talk about supportive housing and how a lot of this, how some of those funds could go into actually implementing some programs and services and doing some rehabilitation on our existing housing units and building a housing stock that can support the immediate needs that occur, that exist in our community. We also came up with other recommendations around inclusionary housing, which is another tool that we're currently studying, preservation of existing units to also help with situations like the one you mentioned, as well as I'm forgetting, increasing the utilization of a state tax credit to actually help improve the production of housing. So if you want to talk more, I'll be available after the meeting if you want to speak more in depth on the report. It's also on our website, so please feel free to contact me and I can give you my card about that.
Okay, thank you.
If I can just do, actually this is a quick plug for City Council. Councilman Daniel Lavelle has been very instrumental in helping to spearhead the Affordable Housing Task Force, along with some other initiatives, as well as Councilman Burgess has been helping out as well too. But there will be some political initiatives that will help with that funding, and I would encourage folks to that are interested in this process to contact Councilman Lavelle's office and see what you can do to help.
Thank you.
Our group has several questions, but the one that we've chosen to ask at this time is, it seemed to us that they were rather vague, and our question is, are there specifics within the priorities that come from the mayor's office, or does each department work to fit their projects into the priorities as set by the mayor? So I guess ours is more of a question about process.
So the mayor's priorities really are kind of a bigger picture, a bigger vision that the departments are responsible for coming up with priorities, council offices as well, projects that will fit into those priorities. So I don't want to say that it's purposefully vague. I think it's more purposefully inclusive of different ways to tackle the same goal. So they definitely, there's room for those departments to execute in different ways. The mayor generally doesn't have specific projects in mind. It's really a trust that he has in the department heads to come up with their expertise, their team, their strategy to execute on those bigger vision ideas that he has.
We have 15 more minutes for this portion of the forum. So if, as we did the last time, if we wanted to go, starting with Mr. Sherman, if you wanted to address your table second question, and then any of the other tables that had another question that they'd like to address, we can go through those. Yeah. So if you'll allow me, because the gentleman from the television station wants to make sure that this gets onto television. So what I understand you to have said is that, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is there anything in the capital budget that can help address how to support people, right, like human capital in neighborhoods, rather than just in addition to facilities and infrastructure, but is there something that can address human capital and nurturing human capital and nurturing human development in the community? Yes?
Right. You got to help the people before you help the community.
Yep.
Is that correct?
So Jessica actually brought up a really good point. While we at the URA don't use capital budget dollars specifically to build human capital, we do work with partners that do, and one example is Career Links, which is an excellent organization that has workforce development, job training programs. They're located downtown, and actually when you do borrow public funds, it is a requirement of the borrower to use the programs at Career Links to fulfill our job creation requirements. Right. So while we may not be using the capital dollars in that way, we are trying to make sure to the best of our ability that we are using those partners that do.
Okay. Well, I only asked that question because the fact that when you start talking to choice neighborhood, I was just wondering what type of dialect that a person would have with somebody who's making $80,000 living next door to somebody who's on welfare. I was just kind of wondering what kind of dialect they would have, because I don't see them having any type of dialect where one is educated and one has and one doesn't have anything and they're not educated. So I just wanted to know how y'all was going to mix that together make that work? I don't see that working.
That's a super good question, and we have talked about that a lot as it relates to choice neighborhoods. So what the gentleman referred to is what you see happening in the Larmer neighborhood right now, in the East Liberty neighborhood, where you see all the construction coming up. That is a federal award of $30 million from HUD to replace 157 existing affordable units. But instead of building 157 units, we're building 350 units so that it is a mix for people of various incomes. So a family might have an annual income of, you know, $8,000 or $10,000, and then a family might have an annual income of $100,000. And some of the city's capital money is going to this development as well. But specific to your question about sort of life, sort of skills and different things, this is really a very cool thing. This is the first, I don't know if I should say the first time, but one big time when HUD, federal government, said, hey, instead of just giving cities money to build housing, we have to give them money to work on these other issues, these other people skills. So of this $30 million coming from HUD, $4.5 million is to go specifically to the people, job training, health and nutrition, education, all this kind of stuff to help them, you know, on their life goals. And another $4.5 million is to go to the neighborhood, including the residents that live in the bigger neighborhood, to help them with some construction and to do parks and to do other things. And so HUD is saying, yes, we acknowledge that all these things have to come together for people to be able, you know, to live together and to all benefit from this in various different ways. So choice is a really new thing, but all of us that are in this field are thinking, okay, how do we duplicate that for all these other projects? So we might not have, you know, the money coming from HUD specifically for the social services in these other projects, but that is where our partners come in. And Jenny talked about career links, and you know, we have all kinds of partners on the social service ends, and we have NeighborWorks who does, you know, housing and financial counseling, and all these other partners. And even through choice, I think the government, the URA and the city offices, we're starting to get a lot more of these relationships put into place that we can then use in other projects.
Hi. My concern is, as a Homewood resident, a new thing is going on in our neighborhood is the animal population, where the deer are starting to be in numbers. Families of deer, bucks, we have raccoons, we have groundhogs, defacing property and different things like that. So I don't know if it's brought to anybody's attention about the deer population that is starting to overcome the Homewood area. Since a lot of the housing has been torn down, we have all this brush now, and they're making their homes in this brush. So I know they're running down my street, they're going to in my neighbors' yards, they're eating up garden things that people are putting out. I just wanted to know what kind of, if it's even brought to your attention about the, you know, our animal control on those kind of things that are starting to happen in our neighborhood. You know, within the last 5 years, we're just starting to see numbers. We have people scared to go home because the buck is up there with 10 antlers, and somebody has to ride the person up the street because they, you know, they're fearful because we don't know, as a city resident, whether a deer is aggressive or not. You know, maybe the buck may be because he has his doe around. The doe and their children may not be as aggressive without him, but you know, this is the kind of thing that's going on in our neighborhood. Thank you.
So in our department, our environmental planner is overseeing a process right now to assess the city's greenways. We also have processes that have gone on to assess the vacant lots that exist in our city and the processes towards maintaining these lots in a much more efficient, coordinated way, not just within city departments, but externally with our partners in the neighborhoods. With the question about wildlife management, I don't know necessarily if that has come up in the early conversations regarding the greenways and the abundance of just natural environment that we have in some neighborhoods due to various circumstances such as Homewood. So I'll be more than happy to take that back to our department and to try to connect this to capital budget, the greenways planning process, as well as the vacant lot toolkit and our adopt a lot program, which again, I'll keep plugging the website. It's on our website, is a direct result of funding that was put in place through the capital budget for neighborhood planning that is facilitated out of our office at City Planning. So I'll try to find some information about wildlife management. And I'm the neighborhood planner for Homewood, so thank you.
Just add something real quick, because I had to go through this myself personally because it's an issue that comes up to council periodically. Wildlife management is actually handled by the state. The city folks, if we get wildlife, touch any wildlife, we have to euthanize it. So not a good thing for the city to be involved in. But what I would suggest is to get in touch with your council office and or I would call 311 as well too, and report these things. And try to get a meeting together to help deal with some of the problems. Have the animal control officer come to your meeting and at least address what can be done and what the city can do and what the city can't do.
So just for the benefit of on the television, the question has to do with bathroom facilities in city parks and recreation centers, specifically Highland Park, but running water and bathroom facilities in city parks.
Thank you.
I'm not clear on the running water. I'll get some more information on that. But we have porta-johns in every one of our parks. We have 158 parks throughout the city. Almost every one of them have porta-johns. Some of them do have structures that do have restrooms. The problems in the past have been we've had extreme vandalism on them. You know, the broken commodes, the water, the sinks and all that, so it's become a very, very costly process. Riverview, there's definitely bathrooms there, but there's also porta-johns there too. It comes down to basically a cost and having the resources to constantly make those repairs.
Okay, if
now,
you're disabled, what's the cost?
No,
the city has to have accommodations for people who are disabled, and you could be 16 and be in a cast. You can't go in a porta-john.
Absolutely. We do put handicap units where it has been requested. We do it in a lot of these shelters. We've had requests for that. Now, let me address the rhododendron shelter. Several years ago, we lost the sanitary line, goes all the way down to Washington Boulevard. We have not been able to get that repaired. If that does get repaired, then we will have functioning restrooms at the rhododendron shelter. But until that time comes, we have to rely on the porta-johns.
Right, but that's been more than a couple. It's been about 10 years.
It's been a long time. Absolutely, absolutely.
So this is the capital budget meeting, and that's my request for the capital budget.
And duly noted, and we're going to try to do that.
We pay plumbers. I mean, we have plumbers on the city payroll.
We are even looking at possibly not worrying about connecting the line, even thinking of maybe just putting a composting toilet in. That would be then you'd have restrooms. So we may not be able to connect that line. It's a very lengthy line. It's several hundred feet down to Washington Boulevard, and there's several lines running down there like that. But we're aware of it. But the county parks have porta-johns. It's a standard unit in a lot of the park systems. So there are definitely buildings, restrooms like Riverview, the activities building. We leave the door open. We've been very lucky up there that nobody's done vandalism. But when we do incur it, it is a problem. It's a very high cost to repair that stuff. What's the running water? What's the issue with the running?
Like sinks, I mean, okay, you have the rhododendron, and then you have the farmhouse, which you do not rent out.
That's correct.
So that's correct. That's ridiculous. We all pay city taxes. Why do you have a wonderful road and not rent it out? Is there a problem with just because of parks on this side of town?
No, it's, you know, the farmhouse isn't really a very large facility. Part of it's used for the city park staff to store a lot of their materials in. Upstairs is, you know, where park offices. So the real rental was actually just one room. And there.
I used to have our family reunions here. I know what the farmhouse is.
Yeah.
We ask that you, if you want to continue this conversation, please.
Yeah, I can talk to you later about it, no problem.
Because there was at least one other question from
Okay.
table 1 here.
Hello, I just wanted you to consider focusing on Main Street entrepreneurs for Beachview and revitalization for neighborhoods for the long haul.
And I won't take too much time, but I will say you are speaking my language. That is what I do every day. I work with entrepreneurs day in, day out, business plans, the resources that are necessary to start a business. Beachview is definitely a focus. I'm working with someone in Beachview right now. We're very excited to see some development starting to happen there. Very involved in the community process. I'm happy to talk more with you about specific resources or needs that you might have or that you see. I'll give you my card before you leave today and make sure that we stay connected. If you want to set something up specifically for the Beachview neighborhood, we're there. We're happy to come out and talk to you about the resources that we have, bring our partners out to talk to you, whatever we can do to help. Thank you.
For the sake of fairness, we have one more.
Yep, last question. So I heard you guys mention the facade improvement program earlier. I'm wondering, as we kind of move forward, as there's more interest in development in the city and housing in the city, if programs like that, like facade improvement grants, can be included for home performance and home improvement on the interior. Because, you know, one of the examples that I used at the table was that facade improvement is like putting fresh paint on a 1989 Toyota Corolla and saying that your car's going to run great. Our housing stock's old and in a lot of places miserable. So I think facade's one thing, but how do we improve the inside functions of the home?
Now you're speaking my language. Yeah, so some of the capital budget dollars go to fixing up both the facade and the interior of residential homes in the city. And the Urban Redevelopment Authority, one of our core functions is to provide home rehab loans for folks. I know the word loan is kind of scary sometimes, and it's not grant, but what it is it's 0% interest to fix up the interior and the exterior of people's homes. And there are some grants that go along with that for sidewalk and lead-based paint and so forth. So there are grant components to that. We're also very open to constantly think about new products. You know, back to what I was mentioning earlier with Choice Neighborhood, we've had an opportunity to kind of put some new products out there, and we actually are going to do facade grants in Larmer as part of Choice, and we're really hoping that will help us fundraise for similar programs in other neighborhoods as well, because I do get a lot of feedback from folks that you know, we need, you know, we need to address our code issues. You know, I bought a 1930s house and, you know, it has all two-prong outlets. You know, how do we go about fixing that? So we're constantly trying to modify our programs. We have a new program we launched to help people acquire and rehab as one sort of loan package, because that's something that's that's hard to get out in the private market right now, so that people can start to fix up some of Pittsburgh's existing housing stock. So we're constantly modifying, so if people have ideas, let us know. We're trying to follow the rules and regulations of various different funding sources, and also to have programs that can really help people. So.
All righty, well, now is the time, if you haven't done so already, the moderators handed out the surveys, and now it's the time we give you the opportunity to take complete those surveys. Again, reminding you that if you want them to know, if you want the city to know it, you want to put it on the survey, right? Now, before you finish that up, what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to help us thank the resource panel for coming out tonight and answering your questions. To help me thank the facilitators, the moderators, people who all volunteered their time today to help you have a conversation. And then I'd like you to give yourselves a round of applause for devoting your time and energy tonight and for completing the survey.